Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Evening Alpha. It is I, Todd Wanish, your host. That opening soundtrack always makes me feel like I've just dropped way too much MDMA and I'm flashing back to like 1996.
I thought I was a Burning Man for a second.
It is. That's exactly what it is. It's the Evening Man. Well, everybody, welcome to Evening Alpha. I've got an incredible guest tonight, and I cannot wait to introduce you. Before we jump in, though, a little bit of housekeeping. If you're just new, if you're just joining us, I should tell you what this is about. So Evening Alpha is a little different than other interview shows in the NFT space. Most of what we do is talk about the storytelling side of the NFT space. And really what we're doing is offering exclusive, unfiltered conversations between NFT founders. I'm the founder of a project called Adult Fantasy. We talk to other founders. So what you get is something beyond like, what? How does your utility work? And what's your tokenization plans? Like an actual conversation so that you get to really know who it is that is behind these projects, because this stuff is not easy and it's incredibly hard. I think it's much harder, having launched a number of tech startups and being in the business for a long time. I think it's way harder. Like it's the hardest type of product you can absolutely do. Like it's insane. So we really like to kind of get behind the scenes and actually talk to people about what it's like to run these projects, what they're going through, what they're putting out there, and really get to know who they are as people so that we can, ape into their projects and be really satisfied with that. So with that said, I'm super stoked tonight. I've got somebody that I cannot wait to talk to and learn more about. JP, what is up, man? How are you?
How's it going, Todd? I'm doing excellent.
Awesome, man.
Stoked to be here. Yeah.
So JP, you are from Cool Crocs. So first only question, man, what the heck is Cool Crocs?
Cool Crocs is a multimedia brand that is a long time coming. It's based on a character I first drew in 2009 as part of a comic series. And that has just been developing its IP, and actually moved down to LA where I am currently to get into the animation industry when I decided that's really what I cared about the most in life is cartoons. And when I did, the pandemic happened, COVID messed with a lot of people's plans, but for me, it led me to NFTs, which is what Cool Crocs is. It is an NFT multimedia brand where we are doing an animated series based on this IP that I've been creating for over a decade. So it's the perfect platform for me to put all of my different creative aspects of it. I was recently diagnosed ADHD, and that's a big component of the project as well, is that the goal is to serve and aid assistance to people that have neurodivergence and ADHD. And that's how it all came about is I was in therapy because I was in LA and the
everybody in LA needs therapy.
That's true.
Like New York, it's like New Yorkers over here. Everyone needs therapy.
And COVID was going on. I couldn't the industry was shut down that I moved here for. It was like rough times for everyone and certainly for me. And through that process, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and it really clicked that all these different creative projects I've been doing over a decade. I've been a DJ. I've rapped, opening up for Hieroglyphics crew members in Oakland. I've done stand-up comedy. I've been writing, visual art, just all over the board. And so that it all came into perspective at the same time, right? The push towards NFT technology, being diagnosed, seeing that animation can thrive in this NFT environment, and just a place where that actually, like a community that actually celebrates creativity versus what I hear in the industries where they don't want you to be a multi-hyphenate, right? They want you to specialize in one thing and put you in that box. And I was never good at that game. And so this is the perfect outlet for a lot of creatives to be founders of projects like this. So that's what Cool Crocs is in a nutshell.
Yeah, you mentioned hieroglyphics, man. So you're throwing some old school hip hop my way. That's nice.
Yeah. Hiero Day just happened down in Oakland, where they celebrate the hieroglyphics, which 93 Till Infinity was their big hit, and I'm really glad that I was able to be part of a hip hop nonprofit that had them perform on our events, and I was able to open up for them.
That's awesome, man. It's so much fun working with these groups. Like I got a chance back in the day to work with Tony Braxton and the Roots and Outkast doing animation for like animated music videos.
That's
for
so rad.
one of my original course, basically a super short story. Like like after I graduated college, I had basically set up my entire career to be an artist, like for Marvel Comics, specifically penciler, comics, Marvel. That's it. If I had gotten that job, I would have been there for done, right? And what ended up happening is when I graduated, I had all the connections. I had worked my ass off through high school and college and gone all up and down the East Coast and talked to editors and did the whole Comic-Con thing all the way to all the stuff. Got to a point where I knew what my work, I wasn't like a badass, but I knew what my work was professional. And then the market crashed. It was like the 90s market crash. And so nobody was getting work. And so I started working at Cartoon Network. And after a few years at that, I was like, you know what? I just want to do like music videos. All I want to do is animate. Like I wanted my career to be like Aha's Take on Me. Like I was like, if I can just direct animated music videos, like my life will be good. And so I got a few. I got to work with the Roots. I got to work with Outkast. I did Tony Braxton and maybe a couple others like smaller tier people. And then I was just like, man, it was way too much work and not enough pay and like all the other.
That's what music videos are. Like, you know, I've been working on a bunch of music videos recently myself, just as production, you know, just doing what I can to survive in LA and doing a lot of production work on film sets and whatnot. And yeah, the money is not in music videos. That is for sure.
For sure. 100%. Yeah. Contrary to popular belief, you know,
but it's cool. I mean, like that's awesome. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
it's a hell of a lot of fun, but it's something you can do in like maybe your 20s, maybe your 30s, but after that you're like, nah, man, I got to eat, you know.
I gotta make some money.
So you took all this passion that you have and you're doing all this stuff. What was it about NFTs or the market or blockchain? Like, what was it that kind of gave you that aha moment that where you felt like you could focus, especially with this chaotic not just creative energy and ADHD and things like that, but chaotic creative energy, which is even harder because I can relate to that 100%. So what was it about this space where it just like made you able to focus on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different things. And like I said, it's all converging together, which was so profound for me. Like, so I got into NFTs, I mean, a long time ago, like CryptoKitties. I was recording an album and my audio engineer was, you know, a crypto nerd. Shout out to Hash Brown. And he, you know, was telling me about Ethereum. He's the first one to like held my hand to get Ethereum wallet. Like I already had Bitcoin. And so as a philosophy ideology, I liked that technology was moving, you know, an internet native currency that doesn't have any borders and isn't centralized, right? So first of all, philosophically, that really woke me up. Is like, because I'm not a big fan of, you know, the capitalist system, governments, or whatever you want to call it that we live in. And so alternatives to that are very exciting to me. So that was the first thing that plugged me down that road. He held my hand the rest of the way there to get me, you know, onto CryptoKitties and to see like what this kind of could do. And back then it was so new, I didn't really understand it. But in 2021, February 2021, we made our first NFTs. He taught me how to go through sites to mint my art as an NFT. And so it was just cool to have art on a different medium. And that's kind of all it was when that started. And then the same month, Gary V's company 137 PM came out with an article like WTF for NFTs.
Right.
And so I took that as a sign because that literally happened a week after I launched my first art as an NFT. So I saw that as like, I must be tapping on the zeitgeist, and like new technology is very fun, exciting. And that excitement, you know, really got into me. Big fan of the VFriends project, which, you know, now we can see is kind of more like a cartoon brand. Like he's kind of doing like, you know, creating Disney in a way. And so seeing that and knowing that that's also what I wanted to do with these characters that I had created back in 2009, it just kind of led me down this path. And then I saw Deadheads do their animated series, and it was like, and then that's when it really clicked. It was like, oh, this is a medium that I can do my goal in life, which was to, you know, merge all of my talents for a cartoon show, and have it exist on a platform with a technology that's new and exciting, and that circumvents a lot of the traditional media outlets and gatekeepers.
Right.
So all of those things happening at the same time, as being diagnosed ADHD and learning about what that is, and seeing that this space is perfect for people that have ADHD and are neurodivergent, because you're your own boss, because it's so chaotic, right? Like our brains thrive and do perfectly well in chaos. It actually makes it more calm. Like I'm better adapted to this chaotic energy of NFTs than an office life, which I've had before, and just it drives me insane. I can only it's only lasted like a year and a half.
Yeah, office jobs are the worst, man. I am the world's worst employee. I really am. I've only had 2 jobs, and they were both by choice. I'd already had my companies for a while, and I just decided, like, I had never worked for anybody else in like a full-time role. Like I had a lot of jobs when I was a kid, and I worked at like Hardee's and Pick and Save and like all these different places, but I'd never worked in like a creative company, right? And so, I only had 2 jobs, and the totality of those 2 jobs lasted under 3 years. It was like 2 years, 6 months. So out of my God, 20 plus years, I've only had 2.5 years of working for other people. And I was in there, I was like taking notes, taking photographs, learning how to like do stuff. And like as soon as I learned my lessons, I was out. I could never do it. So I think one of the things that's interesting, I think, about Cool Crocs is that you're not just talking about this shit, right? A lot of people, one of the things that helped me gravitate to the space was everybody was talking about animation. Like you look at, and it's still true to this day, if you go to everybody's roadmap, anyone that has a roadmap, it's apparel, animation, comic books, right? Those 3 things. And at least, if not, and then it's IRL events and all this other shit. But it was so much. And I was like, holy crap, like everyone's doing comics and everyone wants to do animation. The animation thing I kind of blew off, because with having done this for a number of years, I was like, there's no way in hell 90% these teams can do it. They don't know what they're talking about, right? One of the things that I've always said is, like, when we first launched adult fantasy, people are like, well, why isn't animation on the roadmap? Because I'm an animator. Like, wouldn't I have animation on the roadmap? Don't you want to pilot or this? I was like, well, having done it before, lots, the answer is it's not going to be on the roadmap until it's like well on the way of being produced. You know what I mean? It's not the kind of thing you just toss out there, because the pipeline is so long and it just takes a long time to develop, and a million things can go wrong and make it not happen. And I think one of the things when I saw Cool Crocs is that, certainly you have a lot of those utility elements, like you're talking about clothing or gaming or IRL events, which is totally legit. But you actually launched with an animated, like a show. Like you didn't just say, hey, we're going to do an animated thing. You're like, first episode's over there. Right? Let me know what you think, guys. First episode's live. And that's incredibly impressive for anyone that has never tried to do an animated commercial, let alone a pilot. It's a tremendous amount of work. I don't care how much motion, how limited the animation, it doesn't matter what the style is. It's a tremendous amount of work. So I'm curious to know, really your decision also in saying, hey, we're going to come out with this. Like what most people would do is they would say, hey, buy the NFT here. We're going to do the drop, buy the NFT, and then the NFT will fund the animated project. And you actually said, no, I want to prove myself first. Let me show you what I can do. Right. And so I'm kind of curious as to why, like, what was your thinking behind that?
I mean, and there's a couple things. First of all, thank you so much for saying those, coming from you, that means a lot. Second of all, props for being a responsible NFT founder, where you didn't put something on the roadmap because you knew what it would take and didn't want to, promise something that you weren't sure would come about if, things went a certain way. So I think that is certainly lacking in our space, especially during the Gold Rush era. 2021 and early 2022 this year, it was crazy what people would just throw out there, and just hope to God, well, we need to, once we make $1 million, then we could start trying these things that we promised. And so that was never something, again, as a Gary Vee fan, accountability, responsibility, putting my name attached to the project, and knowing that I don't really have any, I don't have any accolades in the animation industry. I don't really have anything to like rest my
laurels, hat.
Laurels. Yeah. Something. I don't have that.
The thing with the stuff is the stuff that I don't have, and I don't have it most days.
I'm a lyricist. So I don't have, so I didn't have that to rest upon. And if I was going to say something, I had to prove it. And it was, we didn't actually launch with it fully done, but it was in the process from the very beginning. I was already a leg up because I had already had the character designs, right? So there was no creating a character. I already had a story in mind. So, and I think it's so easy for NFT founders to throw the things that you throw out there, right? The comic book, the animation, and the apparel, because once you have digital art, it's like, okay, I can put that on clothes, done. I can put that on in a comic book form, done, and let's just animate it, right? And that's how they think of it, because animation doesn't mean anything to them if they've never done it. And I knew that it was a daunting task, but I also knew how at very least my limited animation skills could do it. So, there was no not executing on that promise, because if everything else failed, and I had $0, I still have my iPad, and I can still show you progress pics. It might take 5 years, but I will, I'll show the community every step of the way that I'm not rugging you. And that was very important to me. So we made, it was difficult to get the cartoon done. We did it how we did it to make sure that we executed on our promise, because a big part of the project is having a DAO that votes on where the episodes go. And so our first episode introduces you into the world, and the main character, Charlie, actually, I don't want to spoiler alert so much, because I definitely want everyone to
whatever, man. The swamp is everything.
But swamp is all. Swamp is all. Yeah. So, and then I will say that the character, ends up going somewhere else, and we don't know where that is. And so that will kind of be voting A. And then our next episode will take place in the swamp and with different characters, and will be vote option B. And our community after episode 2 will then vote, do we want to see what happens on the cliffhanger of episode 1? Or do we want to see what happens on episode 2 and follow that storyline? And I kind of play the dungeon master, because I've written, I've got the Bible of the IP. I've got all these storylines and characters. And so I can say, okay, so you go that way. So then therefore this is how I get to rearrange the story, which is fun, because I don't know how it's going to happen. I know the elements I'm going to use. I know the storylines that we have. I know the characters that are coming into play, but I don't know how they get introduced. I don't know what the community identifies with the most. And ultimately they'll determine that up to a point, right? So it's not like a lot of other projects where it is fully, which, shout out to them, projects that are doing it this way. It sounds scary as hell to me to just be like, hey, I don't know anyone who's coming to this, this to create this show together, but all of us strangers are going to make it together. Like, that sounds very scary. So I wanted to have it to be grounded in a story with characters, and then the community can, oh, what about this part? Let's go back there. Like, oh no, I want it to go over here. Like, okay, cool. We already have this world built, so that's a little bit easier for people newer to this creative process to jump in and help.
Well, I think you bring up a good question, like a good point, and that is, and it's something that we've talked about on the show quite a bit, which is the difference, there's a fundamental difference between projects that are PFP, pure pure PFP projects and projects that come out of the storytelling space with a background in storytelling. One of the things that I worked hard, and I think I had limited success in explaining when we were launching, was that a number of the PFP projects that came out last year when we came out were designs, not characters. Right? When you take characteristics and you shuffle them, you have something that may look like a character, but what you have is hopefully a badass design. Mm-hmm. Right? And if you ask what the hell is the difference, well, it's like if you take number 5732 of this design and 7772 of that design, and they're the same set, monkey 1 and monkey 2, or ape 1, ape 2, whatever it is, like you have things that look the same, but there's no difference. Meaning, what's their story? Where do they come from? How do they wake up? Where do they go to school? What are the relationships? Do they know each other? What's the name? Do they have names? Like there's nothing there. They're like husks. And while I thought it was brilliant for a lot of these early projects to say, you get the right, so it's on you. They're almost like washing their hands of it. Like, hey, you get to have your own brand, man. Go for it. The number of people that actually know how to make a brand out of that are very, very few. Top, not even 1%. Top 0.01 or something. Like very, very few. And so I think when you come at it from the other side, from a storyteller side, with a background in understanding animation or comics or just characters or stories or film, you understand inherently even that there's a foundational element that comes when you actually create a character with a name and a background. Even if it's all you have, if you have, hey, this is all I got, names and backgrounds of these characters, and these characters kind of different, that is enough to actually then move forward. In fact, that was sort of the second generation of Bored Ape, right? Where like all of a sudden some of the apes that had their wits with them or their desire got together and said, hey, we're the ape crew and we're do a podcast. Hey, we're the ape band and we're going to do this. Hey, it's ape beer. And here's they started to kind of formulate cliques and tribes to present different projects. Right. And I think coming out and being able to say, hey, this is a foundational layer. The storytelling layer is the foundational layer. The character is the foundational layer. Let's build on top of that. I think it's fundamentally different from how I would still say a majority of other projects in the space are like trying to attempt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's kind of like a gray area in between that I'm kind of striving for, because we created Cool Crocs basically exactly the same as the run-of-the-mill PFP projects that were coming out in late 2021, because that's when I was building it, and like that's the template that I knew. But I didn't realize that, like you were saying, just having Cool Croc, which was a character that was already developed, and all these other characters were kind of based off of him, and just like, okay, so he's the spokesperson, he is the character, he came from this world made of Crocs, so now I'm just throwing attributes, mixing them all up, and this is the world. And so it becomes kind of that hybrid where it's like, this is the world that he comes from. I have this character developed. This character is developed. He goes on to do all these things. I know all that. I've written those stories, but I was loose on the backstory. I know he comes from the swamp. Let's explore what that is. Mm-hmm. Let's create that. And then with the, using that process of just amalgamating the traits together to come up with all these different Crocs, so those aren't characters, but I now see the community, because they live in a world and that's an established world, the community is creating those backstories. And that's the fun part of it. And I think, like when you mentioned, giving people the ability to use their PFP and start a brand with it, giving those commercial rights. I mean, you're right. No, people, the general person isn't going to succeed with that. And I think Bored Ape is a unicorn is special in that regard, to where it has enough brand recognition right now that you could kind of do that and get away with it without really knowing too much about creating brand.
Right.
Whereas you really can't do that with any other NFT project right now, no matter how much they're selling that to you.
Yeah,
and
right.
so, for me, it's like, I want that to be the case. So I need to enable and empower and support that creation. I mean, oddly enough, a little bit of that happened literally today. A couple awesome members of our community have been making derivative art. Shout out Sebas and Lil Sensei. And so I contacted them, like, let's do something more with this. And, some of it may fit into what I had already had written, so it's like, I'm going to take, what they've done, make it canon with the thing. And that gives them more notoriety, credibility, that if they want to do more on top of that, have their own brand, get those commercial rights, that it does have the support from, the Cool Crocs brand. And I think that's important too, because that's that's a big tenet of the space, right? Is that, we can all have this ownership of the brand. We can all do these things with it. Well, yes, but you can't if the project doesn't actually support that. If they just say, here, you have commercial rights, go do it. But then won't, put that brand on their page or whatever, if they don't support that in any way, then how is it able to get traction? Unless you're Bored Ape, right? Again, that's the exception to that rule, because it has so much notoriety right now.
Right.
But I think to actually execute on that ideal that a lot of us have, founders need to find ways to support their community.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I, just to be clear too, like having the PFPs is not a bad thing, right? Like it makes a lot of, we even talk about it internally, like the idea of having like thousands of characters or thousands of designs that together represent a piece of this greater story is totally legit, right? It's more the projects that kind of drop the character, or the, what they call a character, right? And say, kind of wash their hands about it and then move on to the next thing without the support of the story that goes on top of it.
Yeah,
Does that make
I feel
sense?
like a lot of them are just like, here's the story. Like, well, what is the story?
Right.
I don't know. You guys make it.
You guys, hey, community, you guys do it.
But well, then what are we buying into? It's like, the story. But there is no story. You guys are making it. Like, it
makes an assumption that the shit is easy, right? And it makes an assumption that on the part of the founder or the founding team that people can just do this without really specific direction, right? Absolutely, you can do this 100%. Everybody, there is no one listening to this podcast that cannot create amazing things in storytelling. Like that is now no longer a problem, right? With that said, it still is incumbent upon the founding team and the people creating the project to say, okay, here are the rules of the world. Here's how this thing could kind of work together. And here are some of the options you guys can have that if we work together and through contests or games or whatever you're going to do, can actually pull out these new instances to fit inside the world. It's still your sandbox. You know what I mean? If you just say it's a free-for-all, you get nothing, because one person thinks it's all of a sudden Cool Crocs goes from being Cool Crocs to Speed Racer for no reason. Speed Racer meets Transformers with a side of I don't know, cow and chicken.
All I can think of is the Cool Crocs with the big old school anime.
I'm like, that's kind of cool.
Speed Racer eyes.
There's a classic Simpsons thing where they allow Homer Simpson to design a car, and he ends up putting the best stuff from every car and he puts it all together, and it ends up, when it's unveiled, it's the ugliest thing you've ever seen because nothing fits together at all. And that's kind of what that's like a meme, I think, for most NFT projects that are not really thinking about it in the way that what you're talking about.
I think that is, it's open to interpretation, and that's the beauty of the creative space that we're in. But, that decentralized IP is something that we're wrestling with for the first time ever. So how we create it, like, you know, like you're saying, like it could end up being like that ugly car because it was decentralized and everyone came at it with different ideas that don't fit together.
Yep.
And then there's, you know, I think when we're talking about pure decentralization, Cool Crocs is not technically that, because I'm kind of playing this dungeon master role, and I'm using this IP that has already been created, and these ground level stories that, you know, these stories that I want to tell through these worlds. And so like that already exists. However, there's open, you know, there is DAO voting, there is these elements, you know, members can use their characters in the show. Like there's elements of decentralization without it being fully decentralized. And everyone, you know, that's the beauty of a new creative space, is that everyone can be on that, you know, 100 to 0 spectrum of decentralized IP and what that means to them. And so no doubt we're going to get fascinating results that we've already seen, you know, the beginning of. And I'm really excited. I really think that, you know, what we're already seeing is the very tip of the iceberg of Toon 3, you know, the hashtag Toon 3, the Web3 cartoons that we, you know, both exist in that very small community, right? Like we can name them on our hands how many projects actually fit into that category.
Yep.
But I really believe that it's going to usher in a new golden age of animation, because I think Rick and Morty showed us that we're hungry for new IP.
Yeah.
Right. There's something when that show came out, it was so outlandish. It was so bizarre. It was only able to hit the airways because Dan Harmon has so much, you know, clout in the game of the more traditional, you know, game. And Justin Roiland could never have landed a show. I mean, maybe I was speaking out of turn here, but yeah. I don't think the craziness of Justin Roiland could have gotten a show without someone who had already been established in that system, you know, pulling him in. But the success of it obviously shows that that's what we're hungry for as consumers of content, is really radical, experimental, creative, you know, cartoons. And that's what we're able to do when we, you know, when we bypass the gatekeepers of, you know, these suits that I would love to know your perspective on those suits that are giving the green lights to shows and not giving the green lights to others because they haven't got to meet the metrics. And I know a little bit of it since I've been in LA, because that's the first thing that I tried to do was get into the writing world and started, you know, learning from other writers and taking classes and hearing their stories about pitching and just being like, I don't think this is for me, because it doesn't seem like it rewards.
It's hell, man. To me, it was hell. It was living hell. I'll tell you about it. That's a great, I'll certainly tell you about it. So real quick though, I want to jump in the chat. Just say give props to everybody who showed up tonight. Willie D, what's up, brother? How you doing? LFG, Big Top Midway, what's up, Big Top? Big Top is an awesome project. Shout out to Big Top. What's up? Let's duck and go. What's up, man? KG, how you doing? Evening. How you doing, KG? KG, congratulations on winning, on beating Tiger Woods this past weekend in your golf game. It was phenomenal to see you beat such a legend. I'm just kidding. Dusty, what's up, man? How are you doing? Natasha, let's go. Let's go. Mastiff, what's up?
Hey,
let's duck and go, Cool Crocs.
Yeah.
Go, JP. Mastiff says, love the first episode. Awesome. Yeah, first episode. I can't wait to see
Dragon Forge. They're making their stuff right now.
Hell yeah. Hype, what's up, Hype? Welcome. Been a minute. Missed you. LFG, what's up, Hype? Always good to see you. Natasha says hieroglyphics. Yeah.
Let's go.
Bad Kitty, what's up? Hey, everyone.
Bad Kitty.
Natasha says, so awesome. Hip hop heads, love it. Massive says, you can't say that. You'll end up like Jerry.
Jerry.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So you asked it's kind of a deep question about the suits, because they're almost like caricatures themselves, and there's different like ways the shit can go down, right? So without covering all of the stereotypes, there's like a lot of these people run by committee. You know, I've seen projects get tossed out for the dumbest shit in front of the best people, purely because they were worried about something that wasn't a problem, the color of someone's hair or the size of someone's lips, right? Like ridiculous things that could be changed. I mean, to people, like it just the weirdest shit, dude. You also have other people who, you also have people who will select projects, and this is again not everyone. I'm putting people into giant buckets here, right? But like, you have someone, you have people who will select projects that they can control, right? So if they feel like they can actually be the cook and be the chef in the kitchen, then they will do that. And if you don't want that, then that's the good luck,
and,
right?
And I think that's probably the most important point, is that a lot of and there's a fine line, right? Like as a creative, I often said this as in regards to my making music, is that like, you know, making art is like making babies, but you have to like kill half of them.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's what the cutting room floor is, right? That phrase of like, okay, that's not good enough, but like you still create, like that's still your baby, you know? So it's like, It's hard. So you have to like kind of become okay with making a baby and then murdering it. And that's, I apologize for the metaphor.
No, but it's true though. It is.
I mean, because that's how much it means, you know, to a lot of us artists when we create something and then we have to say, not good, not doesn't fit, can't use it, and it hurts.
What ended up happening to me is I got to the point where I was fortunate enough to get in, and I was pitching, and I got in front of one of the biggest names in animation. So someone that people in animation would know. Super good guy, legit, like runs a tight ship, awesome to artists, was really supportive and was really interested in working on this project that I had pitched. And I was diving into what it's like on the other side of things, because you never know, right? Like there's a difference between being an animator and being an animation director and being a showrunner and being someone that actually creates the show. And I don't want to say the artist who was the animation guy he was talking about, and he wasn't saying it as a negative, but he was just thankfully he was being real. Basically, at the end of the day, to your point, JP, like when you go into the traditional system, you are signing over the rights to everything. So you don't get 50%, you don't get 90%, you don't get 99%, you get a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent. You are the lowest on the totem pole for inventing the show. On top of that, you're the one doing the animation, because you're basically, what you get as the artist when you do these shows is you get your name on the credits as the director and as the creator. You get your artwork and your characters, if it's successful, everywhere through licensing and creative services deals, right? And you get yourself a job. So you get a higher pay, a slight bump in pay over, say, a director, right? But not so much that you're buying a yacht, if you get my drift, right? And I was talking, thankfully I learned this. I mean, you're basically getting, you know, a decent pay, right? Which is fine to raise a family on. It's like, I don't remember what it was, but I'm sure it was in the low six figures, which is great. It's fine. And you're getting like a tiny, like a bump. The percentage that you actually own is small enough to be considered a bonus pay at Christmas time, right? And certainly there are exceptions to the rule depending on your history and how famous you are and how much pull you have. But your first show, you're not getting jack shit, really. And you know, honestly, like I was like, well, he put me, this person put me in touch with someone who had 2 shows under his belt, very well-known shows that you would know. And I talked to him for a little bit, and I just couldn't get it out of my head that it didn't seem like this guy was happy at all. He just didn't seem happy, you know? And I was like, dude, you got like shows, like everyone knows your stuff. Everybody knows your stuff. To this day, people know his stuff. but it just didn't seem happy. And maybe there were other things going on, who knows. But to me at that point in time, I was like, I'm not looking for a job. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mind working on my stuff, but it has to be at a certain level. Otherwise, I'm just giving you all of my creative energy to guarantee that I have a job for a season or two.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's where this is really changing the game, because, like when I first moved to LA and was, looking at that traditional route, there's no way in hell I would ever let my big concepts that is now Cool Crocs be sold. And that's my most developed stuff, right? But I knew that was the game. So it's like, well, if I'm ever going to get that on TV, first I have to do 2 or 3 shows that I'm just making up. And I think that's how we end up with all this, mediocre stuff, is because this is exactly what you described. It was people just like, okay, well, I have to give all this energy to just get a job, so I'm not going to give them my real thing that I'm really working on, right? Or if they do, then they lost it. And it's like, well, that was that thing I created, but now I only, I don't get any residuals. When they took it, they changed it, they messed it up, and now I don't even own it anymore. And that was what I really cared about, and so it just forces like the artist to like, okay, I can think of a character, I can think of a thing, I can think of an episode in a season. Let's pitch that. Okay, cool. I got that green lit. Sweet. Let's do another thing. I have these characters. And like, there's not as much heart and soul into that because they can't, because they'll get it ripped away from them if it even gets there. And again, that doesn't fulfill me. That I don't, that makes sense why it didn't fulfill your friend who that conversation was with. And that's why this project for me is so fulfilling, is because, I know individually like 99% of all the holders, and I am going to continue to talk with them more. And as and that community is actually gives me, spirit. Like it makes me feel good, versus, so it adds to creative energy versus like taking the creative energy away and feeling like you're getting ripped off, because that story is probably the most common story in the Hollywood system, is what happened to the artists. Well, they got screwed, and that's the most common story. And I understand it from like the perspective of what the media companies have to do when they're overhead and blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't negate the fact that, they're using artists like wood to a fire, right? Just keep the thing going, to keep it lit. And they're just burning us out, and for what, just to keep the train moving a little bit further, just to feed the pockets of those numbers, good for the investors. And so many artists have an issue with that. And it's really difficult to walk that line where you can be commercially successful and still, keep that, like to navigate that is really tricky. I definitely haven't found it myself, which is why NFTs were the answer to that. Like, oh, let's bypass that whole system. Let's just, even though it's difficult, like I know that I have a small community that, it was right there in the comments, like people referencing the show, and that brings so much joy to me, more so than if I would have sold Cool Crocs for a check and then never being able to own that IP to do anything with it ever again.
It also, I think, spoils you. And what I mean by that is like, at least it did with me, and I'm not even talking about NFTs specifically. Like, this is way back. Like when I started doing my own projects and launching my own books and comics and toys and doing my own stuff. And every single time after that, where I had to go into an animation studio, whether I was a consultant or, however they were bringing me in, I was like an alien, because I didn't speak the language, meaning there's no connection. Like, certainly if I would go on, on site, and I'd be directing, a commercial or a pilot or whatever, and you're focused on the work, and you're like, yeah, here's the pipeline, the deadline, the keyframes, but the minute you try to get personal, like there's no connection, because you can't have you can't have a normal conversation, because nobody, the minute you tell them, oh yeah, I've got this NFT project and I've got this community and Discord, and yeah, I'm talking about this and we're creating this world, people are like, what are you talking, like it's like speaking a different language. It's like, what? I don't, you have that, and all of a sudden you are now outside of that system, like, and there's almost no way that you can go back. It's very hard to go into that system after being out of it or having never been in it. Like you would be coming into that and it would be cool for a minute, and then you'd be like, what the fuck am I doing here?
And I've seen it. I've seen literally we were working on a feature film not that long ago. I'm just on the production team, but someone that I was working with was talking to the Grips because she wants to be a director, so she wants to know, all the ins and outs of everything, which is great. But when she was talking to them about getting a job, they're like, well, don't tell anyone that you want to be a director. Like they'll never let you in to this department if they think that you want to do something else. And it's just like, how messed up of a system is it when everyone has to hide their true, and why shouldn't she want to get a job doing this so better informs another part? Why isn't there more? And I don't know the answer to that. I just know that that's the thing I saw. That's the thing I keep seeing. And, I've always felt like an outsider anyway. I know now that a large part of that is because of, neurodivergence and my brain just operating differently and never knowing why. So I always just felt different. And, but that's, I think, one of the great things, again, about the NFT community, especially in regards to entertainment and, the NFT projects that are creating IP, is we don't have to play that game anymore. We can come in from the outside. You can be an independent creator, ferocious, to name right. Someone that I like. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, he is who he is from just, being a kid making art in his room. And that story is everything. That ability, that opportunity to, just be at the right place at the right time, have talent, have drive, and create that for yourself, that community that you can get people to through social media, right? You don't need anyone else. You can find your people that relate to you and bring them value through your art, and you can live off that. That changes the whole game. That changes the whole game.
It really does, man. I think we're in such interesting times, and I'm really curious how one of the challenges of what we do is that we are every day is living on the cutting edge, right? And so, which sounds awesome and cool, and sometimes it can be, but it's really effing difficult. And so I'm curious, how you manage this kind of this, I don't know, quote unquote, cutting edge problem where there is no template, right? We don't even have enough information in the NFT space to predict how September NFT sales are going to be, because Dune Analytics, as far as I know, and some of these other trackers only go back as far as last year, because that's when they were built, right? I mean, certainly you can see crypto from 2011, but if you wanted to see like the actual charts and graphs of 2010 and before, it's actually kind of hard to find. So I'm kind of curious how as a founder of this, how do you deal with oh, we got to be on Discord all day, or we got to do giveaways, or we have to motivate the community, or we got to launch this, we got to set up a plan for that. What's your process like? How are you kind of managing this shit?
It's funny because on one hand, the answer is not at all, terribly. I struggle constantly. I was wondering if this is going to come up, because I have literally been very depressed for weeks now.
Why?
Why? Because it's tough. There's not a lot of money. I'm struggling to survive in LA, and so that can be challenging.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult. And then there's amazing things like this and our community that keep me going. And so I think that's so on one hand, like, yeah, no, it's a struggle, and I'm getting through it the only way I know how. But the other side of it is it's easy because I'm not. I know, right? You like the duality, because I don't care about the price of Ethereum. I don't care about NFT sales. What this is a drive, a lifelong yearning to create something. Like I said, I drew this character in 2009.
Yeah.
Like I've been kind of developing and toying with it. And I think really I was scared to go all in with it. I think that's what it was, is that I've been doing this on the side and no one was giving me outer validation that like, oh, you should do this full time for your life. Like I didn't get that validation, so I kind of leaned away from it, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop thinking of the stories. I couldn't stop thinking of the characters. I just kept toying with it in my spare time. And then eventually realized that that's what it was a fear of that. And then so I took that big leap to go to LA, to just pursue it no matter what. Thank God that I found a better medium, in my opinion, that this NFT technology, as opposed to the industry that we've both been talking about, the cons of. And so once I found that, it's like, okay, like this is what I'm gonna do. It doesn't matter what it looks like, because I know from a philosophical, ideological, and even technological level, this allows me to do what I want to do. Now I just have to do it. And so I don't care what the Ethereum price is. I don't care what NFT sales are. I'm doing what my heart always wanted to do.
Yeah. And
yes, it can be challenging because we live in capitalism. The rent has to get paid. I have to feed myself. Like, stuff happens. Life is hard. But at the end of the day, there's the Mastiff is quoting a part from the episode.
That's right.
And nothing's better than that.
That's awesome. Yeah. What do you think is what do you think about all of these companies and networks now jumping into the NFT space?
I think it's inevitable. I mean, if there's money, there's going to be corporations that want that money, like as soon, and that's what capitalism necessarily does, is keep creating different segmentations to sell to, right? The tween did not exist when we were kids, but they invented that demographic to sell to them. And
right.
And that is a process that is necessary in capitalism. So once a little window opens up, it will be exploited as much as possible, because that's what the machine needs to continue moving. And so of course they're going to get in, but we've had at least a year now, and we still have a solid amount of time, maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 5, before we see a real, before I think there'll be like a shut. I mean, because that money, that corporate, whatever you want to call it, it does take over. But right now we have this opportunity, right? And that's why I'm so passionate about it, is that right now an independent creator is on the same level footing as Versace.
Ain't that cool,
Marvel.
Man? Isn't that freaking awesome?
It is. It's the coolest thing ever, and it's like, it's so exciting that we have this opportunity right now. We can do it. It's not going to be here forever. You have to be smart. You have to be tactical. You have to really work hard. It's tough, but it's an opportunity, and these opportunities don't come very often. And I feel at my age, I'm 36, so I was a kid when the internet was created and didn't have the foresight to be like, oh, I'm going to be on computers because this is the future, so I feel like I missed the internet. Social media, Facebook was created, when I was a freshman in college. Facebook was basically created for my generation specifically. And I missed it. I didn't, use that technology to become, an influencer or what have you. And so I feel like I've already missed it twice. And so when I saw NFTs, it's like, there's no fucking way I'm missing this again.
Yeah.
And it's a platform actually for art. Whereas, we know social media really wasn't, right? Because they own everything that you put on there. And we know that in its infancy, the internet was just information. So it really, the laws weren't really there yet. The structure wasn't really there yet. But now everything is mature. We have internet, currency native to the internet. We have our art, we can own it through the blockchain, even if it's digital. So now all the infrastructure is in place to allow for us to go. So as artists, let's go. If you're listening and you create anything, make an NFT project, stand by it, and work at it.
It's so the future, man. I mean, it's the way everything is going. If you believe that people are going to spend more and more time online, and if you believe that, because people spend more and more time online, that at some point digital items will become as precious and as valuable as real life items, then the only thing else to decide is whether decentralized digital items are more important and precious than centralized items. And it's pretty obvious, I think, with anyone who thinks through it critically, what the actual answer is, and that is NFTs and what we're doing in the space. And I think it's really obvious. No matter what people think, it's kind of like, I've lived through this too. The whole NFT space, when I saw last year, and fortunately we got in early and started building early, and but it reminded me, like, I was an animator working, and I had some gigs during the .com bubble, and I didn't know anything about tech at the time, so I missed that whole thing, right? And then before that, in the 90s, like, I was a student, I was a kid, I was in high school when the whole Image Comics thing blew up, with, like, all the top comic artists getting together and leaving Marvel and DC and all that, and kind of coming together and just launching their own stuff. And they were fucking rock stars. And when of course I missed that because I was just too young. And then seeing this, when I saw what NFTs were doing, I was like, oh, here it is. Like, this is it. This is probably the last, this might be the last major. I mean, this is the next internet. And we're probably, none of us will be around beyond, like, this might be it for the next 50 years. It really might be. Like, this is such a leap from Web 2.0 and from what was before. I was like, I dropped everything. I was like, I got it. And I had to have, like, very, very hard, wonderful conversations with my wife about why I was dropping our successful business that we had worked like almost 10 years building, right? To where we finally got to this point where it was like, I basically was chill. Like, I was easy. It was no stress. Money was rolling in. Like, I finally hit that point. And all of a sudden I was like, so babe,
we gotta change this.
So, yeah.
Oh man.
So how everything is working perfectly finally after, like, years of starvation? How would you like to starve again? Like, how would you like to just take a shot?
Why not just start all the way over?
Yeah. How would you like to just start from zero again? And fortunately, she's awesome. And
well, shout out to all the women out there. I
Shout
know that my girlfriend Michelle Chu, it's Michelle Chu on Twitter. She's listening, and it was really cool because it's kind of similar in the sense that when I went down the rabbit hole of NFTs, she was next to me being like, what is happening? What are you doing? Why are you waking up in the middle of the night spending money that you don't really have that much of to buy a picture of what now? Like,
I literally explained it to Melissa. I had no joke. I was, because Melissa is our lead dev. So she's a senior dev. Like, she is no joke. Like, she knows her shit. And I literally had to start breaking down crypto. I was trying to explain NFTs and crypto, and no joke, I straight up said, so the story about Magic Beans? And I just told her the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. And I was like, that's what it is. And she was like, this is not selling me, Todd. Like, you're not helping your case by telling me that you want to sell a cow for some Magic Beans.
Right.
But I was like, it's kind of true. It's kind of accurate. It's pretty close.
I also wanted to give you a shout out for recognizing that, because your industry as a whole did not. and does not, as far as I can tell. I mean, do you want to speak towards that a little? Because I talked to, like I said, I was literally on a film set and I talked to the director being like, because the film was supposed to be an NFT, or it is going to be an NFT, but literally not a single person on set, including the director, the producer, no one knew anything more than that sentence that, oh yeah, it's going to be an NFT. Well, what does that mean? Where's it going to be released? What's blockchain is on? Like how is it? Is it going to be the whole movie? Is it like, what are you going to do? And oh, we don't know. We don't know a single thing about it. And frankly, we don't care. And that's, I've gotten that, as an artist, put like, oh, here's my art, whether it's painting, whether it's, pencil on paper, whatever it is. But then they'll see like, oh, and you make NFTs? Nah, get out of here. And it's just like, I don't understand why people in your line of work, arguably animating is going to be the line of work that can make the most money in NFTs.
I know. It's fear, man. It's fear of what they don't understand. And it's terrifying. Like artists and creatives, it doesn't matter how, especially pros. Amateurs can have a fear. Amateurs have the fear that, and I'm generalizing, so anecdotal evidence here. But speaking in broad brushstroke terms, amateurs have a fear that if they choose to do the wrong thing, that may keep them out of future opportunities. If I say the wrong thing, if I do the wrong thing, if I speak to the wrong people in the wrong way, I will lose my opportunities. So there's a fear there. The professionals have an opposite. The professionals have an opposite fear. The professionals have the fear, as they say, if I do or say or support the wrong thing, I'll lose everything. Right? And that's a stronger fear, because it's always more fearful to lose what you've already earned than it is to something that you've never had.
That sounds, I mean, that's what I've experienced.
Terrifying.
In
it's
Hollywood.
Absolute terror. Go ahead.
But that only exists in the microcosm of the industries, like, because that's how we see it, right? Like that's not inherent to human culture, right? Like it exists in Hollywood, and I don't, in New York, like that machine, it exists for sure, because it is so nepotism is so rampant to where you can't say the wrong thing, or else the wrong people will say no, and if you get denied by then they're blackballed from the entire industry, and then 100%. Your career's over.
Yep. And we've talked to people on this show. It's actually incredibly interesting to me, because you have all these people who have had completely different backgrounds, who have their own lives, who support their own things, different races or religions and political, all this stuff, just a complete palette of people. Yet everybody has had the experience of someone saying, you support that NFT crap, you're awful. This is horrible. It's terrible. It's absolute shit. And you're going to whatever. It's like, wait a minute. Like, it's a very unique bonding element. You know what I mean? It's like, we can all agree that those people are nuts. And it's like, it's a very fascinating thing. It's a very fascinating thing.
I never thought I would be so lucky as to not have been able to get into that system, because that would have been me, Yeah. If everything would have gone the way I wanted it to in 2019 and early 2020, I would, be low level in the industry, in the animation industry somewhere. And I would have seen NFTs and been like, huh, yeah. And people just said like, yo, don't tell anyone that, like, don't actually do that. Oh, shoot, you're doing an NFT project, you're out, man, and
yeah.
Who knows if that would have just, so I guess I never thought of it that way. So I'm glad you brought that.
It's so bad, JP. It's so bad that, and this is, you can do research on this. It's so bad that the companies last year, every company wants to jump into NFTs, all of them, gaming companies, animation studios, comic company, you name it, they all want to do NFTs. None of them want the blowback from either fans or employees, right? And they know that there's a blowback factor because of misinformation, and people just don't understand. They're not thinking about the future. They're thinking about it's apples and oranges. They think about things, numbers and data in silos, and not the broader picture of what it actually means. Well, here's how dumb it is. Here's how dumb it is that companies last year were like, we're going into NFTs, and they got blowback. no, don't do it, destroys the environment, this and that, awful people, black market, blah 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 blah, dark money, whatever, all the stuff that you're just like, oh my god, this shit is insane. This year they said, we are no longer, they come out and say, we've heard you, we are listening, we the corporation, we hear you, we are listening, we will not be doing NFTs. Instead, coming soon, digital collectibles. You know what I mean? And everyone's like, oh, that's totally fine.
Oh, okay.
Totally fine. We're cool. You want to do your digital
things that we can buy
fine.
but not own? All right.
Yeah. Oh, these are digital collectibles that have a contract that's immutable on a blockchain. Totally fine. Absolutely fine. As long as they're not NFTs. And you know, and I think what you're gonna see is that I think that the word NFT is like the word JPEG. Like, nobody says really JPEGs. They export to JPEGs, they upload JPEGs, but you're not really talking in terms of JPEG. You just say picture.
Yeah.
You just say picture. And that, I think, is pretty much where everything is headed.
Yeah.
Right. At the minute you get out of the language, everyone's totally cool with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I have empathy for that too, because it makes perfect sense why an established system would spread disinformation about something that could radically change and take away power, from the power structure itself. So it is very threatening. This technology is very threatening to governments, to people that hold power, that want the established system to remain the same. So, let's put everything negative about it. And if all you're doing is eating those, run-of-the-mill news sources or media sources, if that's all you consume, that's your opinion.
Right. And these companies get it, man. Nobody wants to be blockbustered,
No. And I mean, it happens so fast. I mean, I thought it was, because I forgot about it. Like, honestly, I don't really pay attention to a lot of things. I like to only live in my little cartoon fantasy world. But it was Anthony Hopkins. He posted like, and I don't know if it was him, but it was on his Twitter profile. Like, I want to learn more about NFTs. And I was like, oh, cool. And I jump in there just totally like, oh, how fun, Anthony, and then every comment is, no, oh my gosh, you're the devil now. Oh, I thought you were great, but now I have to get rid of all your movies. And just like, it's like really, and so like I started going through so naive, being like, oh, actually, let me just inform you really quick. I'm sorry. You must have not have the accurate information. And I tried to just be a reasonable human being and like be like,
you can't be reasonable, don't you dare.
Yeah, I was lambasted, and it was a horrible experience. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is the
if you ever wanna have a laugh, or just like have enough fodder to talk to somebody in a conversation, like off the internet and IRL, go look at any comment from any major comic publisher. Like Image Comics launched a Bored Ape book, or like a couple of Bored Apes. It was he's a famous comedian. He has a Bored Ape, so he decided to do a Bored Ape comic under the Image banner, and just the comments are crazy. If you look at DC Comics launched the Bat Cowl. They did like a Batman NFT where it's just like the cowl of Batman, and it's like you can have one in wood and one in jade. Not my thing personally, but people seem to like it. But the comments are just thousands deep, and they're hilarious in how like bad they are. You're just like, wow, like the emotion. It's not even it's just pure emotion.
Yeah.
It's like someone's taking away their toy. And when really it's the exact opposite. Like, you're like, yo, you get to create whatever you want now, and nobody can take it from you.
I mean, yeah, yes. And again, if you don't have that knowledge, how are you going to know that perspective? Because I think it's anytime people's worldviews, because people, like I went to school in anthropology and philosophy and stuff. And so like, how people understand the worldview, right? Because I see it mostly with religion, because that's where that kind of led me down that path, is how I was raised religious and started questioning it at an early age, and then the blowback from that was like, okay, I really need to figure this out, because they do not like you asking questions, which seems to go directly against Jesus' teaching. But anyway, don't point that out to them. They will really hate you. And so it led me to study it as a phenomenon in human behavior. And that's what I've learned, is when people create their worldviews, they're more or less solid. And anything that threatens that worldview is, just won't compute and must be destroyed for them to keep existing the way that they thought they existed. And so it's really like, I mean, that's why you get that passion and that emotion, because it's life or death. This thing, though we're open to it and we see the positives, if they've only seen the negatives, this thing is trying to destroy who they think they are.
Right.
And so I get from their perspective, it's just a shame that as a society, we've lost the ability to have a nuanced conversation, especially in media, right? There's no such thing as a nuanced conversation on a news channel, like that,
right.
That just doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's led to people not being able to have a nuanced conversation. And once, that's not a possibility between two people with opposed views, like it's really difficult to make any headway in sharing ideas, which is a shame, because that's the most beautiful thing about humanity, in my opinion, is the creativity and how we can share these ideas that can change the world. Case in point, what we're all been talking about, NFTs.
That's awesome, man. I think that's a brilliant point, dude. That's a brilliant point. Massive says, keep going, JP.
I will, just for you.
KG's laughing. I think he was laughing at our compassionate corporate talk. And Dusty says he's still looking for that rare wooden bat cowl. Yeah, those were something else. Well, JP, man, this has been awesome, dude. Where can people find you? Where should we direct everybody?
coolcrocs.io, first and foremost, is flashed on the screen. So thank you for that. That's where you can mint a croc. Has the links to our Twitter and Discord and everything. The Twitter is at Cool Crocs NFT. I'm there all the time. I have a personal Twitter, which is at JPZ_JAYPEEZY, which was formerly my my rap persona handle. Not that anyone's going to do it, but if you scroll all the way back to like 2003 or 5 or whenever the hell, 2007, I forget when I made it, but it's all like rap. And then it's just like all NFT. Like there was like a huge 5-year gap when I was not on Twitter at all. It's just all rap, and then all of a sudden it's all NFT stuff. But yeah, I'm there the most. We have a Discord. I love when people jump in, but I'm mostly on Twitter. I don't know if you've asked this, but the things that I'm working on. Are you about to ask them? Maybe I'll wait for you to ask.
What are you working on?
So we've got a card game coming out, which I'm very excited about. That's going to be the newest product that we drop as Cool Crocs, the brand. We've already launched the plushie, our wearable, t-shirt and hoodie, and the next is going to be a card game. So I'm very excited about that. Working on the art for that. And our Shopify store is coming soon, which I think will be able to bring in a lot of people into the NFT world. I mean, going back to what we were last talking about, and also I mentioned my girlfriend and how in the beginning she didn't know, what I was doing in this NFT life, but now she is on it. Like she's talking about it on stage. She has surpassed me with her knowledge of NFTs. So with the Shopify store, bridging those gaps, right? Bringing people in, and how she got brought in was she finally found something that she related to, where she could earn crypto just from walking. It's a project called Step In. So when she learned that she goes on walks, that she could just be making money just from going on these walks, like that's what clicked for her. And I think all it takes is one thing. It doesn't matter what you're into. There will be an NFT project, if there's not already, that caters to your demographic. And that's when people will be like, well, I like that, so maybe I do like NFTs. And so we're trying to do that through the brand, because a lot of people that I've talked to, they like the cartoon that's on YouTube. They really like the shirt. I've had the shirts for like a long time, and people come up to me like, yo, I love that shirt. I love that character. And I'm just like, cool, it's an NFT project. And they're just like, I don't know what that is, but but that doesn't matter, right? Like, let's just bring them in slowly. And so I'm excited for the Shopify store to open to let people learn about the story. And then eventually they will see that if you're a holder of the NFT, you get all this stuff I'm selling for free. Holders get it for free. So I think that's when people will kind of like make that switch and just say like, oh, okay, why wouldn't I go through the process of the MetaMask? I know it's scary. Probably the listeners here aren't the people that, you know, this message is aimed to reach, to get over the hump of how scary going through the MetaMask process is. But that's what we're doing with Cool Crocs to try to bridge that gap, to try to onboard more people, is bring them into the storyline and the cool products, and then let them know that if you're a holder, you get all this for free.
That's awesome, man. I think that's fantastic. And congrats again on getting the animation out, because that's no small feat.
Thank you.
Not at all. So absolutely. So everybody, go check out JP's project. Go check out Cool Crocs. Coolcrocs.io. Support people. You got to support good people. So go out there, follow them on Twitter, support the project, go check it out. And JP, man, this was awesome. Thank you so much, dude.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. Lovely talking to you. I hope we get to continue the conversations on and off the internet. And thanks to Dusty too for doing what he does and helping out.
Absolutely. JP, and, hang out for just a second. We'll talk in the green room here. But everybody else, thank you so much. Evening Alpha. Go check us out on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music. We are everywhere. We're also on YouTube. So please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all that good stuff. We're growing, we're expanding. You know that. And we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. We couldn't do this without you. So thank you so much. And as always, God bless. Take care of yourself. Love you.